Hey everyone, thank you for joining me for this video, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about grubs and how to control them in your lawn. Alright, so let's get right into it here. I picked up this bag of Grub X, which is a Scott's product, from Home Depot just a couple days ago, and actually it does a pretty good job on the back of explaining kind of the whole thing with grubs, why we want to prevent them, and kind of how this product works. But first of all, let's just take a look at this real quick here. So this active ingredient here, which I'm not even going to try to pronounce, this is a little bit different than some of the other ones that maybe you would apply around the June, July time, like a product called Merit. That one tends to be applied in early summer for us here in the Midwest. That's kind of the timing of it. But with this other one in this bag here, they've been showing that it takes a little bit longer to work into the soil. There's been a little bit of studying done on that. So it can be applied a little bit earlier, as it takes a little bit more to get going and move down into the soil. This bag happens to cover 10,000 square feet here, so that's kind of important to look at. This is also going to kind of explain here the whole grub thing. So what happens with grubs is they start off like this. You'll usually find like a white grub in your yard if you dig down into it, or sometimes you're digging maybe to do a garden this year or something and you find some of these. So finding a couple of them is usually not going to be a problem, but when you start to dig around and you find multiple in kind of a small area, then you know you've got a little bit more of an issue. So they start off in the spring like this. They start to feed on the actual grass roots, and then they'll actually turn into this beetle form after they've grown up and eaten a bunch of your turf. And then they'll come back down, lay eggs, those will go back down into the soil, and then the next year you have more of them. So what happened with me a few years ago is I had a decent grub problem in my backyard, and what's interesting here in our region is that with our cool season grass, sometimes in the summer it tends to get really dry, and if you can't keep up with the watering, sometimes your grass goes brown and dormant. And then you really can't tell when this damage is occurring because all the grass is brown at that point, and you really can't look and see, okay, is this from a grub or is there a specific area there that's being targeted by a pest like this? If you do try to keep up with watering in the summer, it might be a little bit easier to find this, but what you're going to find are patches of brown grass in your otherwise fairly green grass, and you're going to go over and kind of tug on those a little bit and see if they're still rooted down into the ground, and what you're usually going to find is that those roots are gone. The piece of grass just pulls right up and it's dead at that point because the grubs ate all of the root system, and there's nothing left at that point. So I've been wanting to try to prevent this now, and if we can get this preventative going for a few years, maybe we don't have a major grub problem happening anymore. We might at that point be able to make a decision whether we want to continue prevention or not. But if you know you've had an issue in the past for sure, then I would look at something like this. And if you're worried about this issue coming up in your turf, then applying a product like this as a preventative is going to be a little bit better situation than having the damage occur and try to fix it afterwards. The other thing to note here is that this is going to prevent our grubs here, but it's also going to prevent some other issues in the yard, some other pests that can do some damage as well. So not just a grub product, but primarily what we're focusing on where I'm at here is that it's going to be these white grubs that cause some issue. Now this of course is a Scott's product, so they're going to recommend their spreader settings for the Scott spreaders. So for the Scott spreader that I have, it's recommending a 3.5 on the setting there. And if we remember here again that this whole bag covers 10,000 square feet, then let's just say we had 5,000 square feet to cover. Obviously, just cut this bag in half, put it in your spreader, and then walk across that area until it's evenly spread out on that area. That's one way to do it. I made a video recently on how to calibrate your spreader, so you kind of get an idea whether you're applying things accurately with your settings that you're using on your spreader. But again, just think logically there about eyeing that, and if you got 5,000 square feet to cover, put half of that bag in there. If you got 7,000 feet to cover, then put 3/4 in. You can always start small on your spreader and walk over it more times. It would be better to walk over it evenly than to have it set too high and put out too much and then run out. I hope that part makes sense there on applying. I know that from my testing, I'm usually pretty close to the actual settings on the bag with my walk speed when I'm doing my fertilizing. So with a product like this at a setting 3.5 on my Scotts, I also should be pretty close to that application rate. I could dial it down just a touch and walk more if I wanted to, but another thing to note after you apply this is that it needs to be watered in. It recommends roughly 1 inch of water. So we're forecast to get some rain here later on today, and we'll see how much that amounts to. If I need to add a little bit more water afterwards, I can also do that by manually watering it. Also, it does say on the bag there that this product is safe for kids and pets to enter the area. Again, after it has been watered and the grass has dried. So just keep that in mind if you got your kids, pets out in your yard. You might want to apply this when you're gonna either get a rain and you can get it watered in and then let it dry, or you're gonna water it right away and then let it dry before you let people back into that area, just to be safe. Now, it just so happens that I've measured out my lawn again this year to make sure I have everything correct there, and I made a map of this and a little video about it recently as well. It's important to know the sections of your yard, what size they are, and that way we can accurately put this down. I happen to have about 10,000 square feet there, so this bag's gonna pretty much perfectly fit my property.